Okay, here we go. Hi everyone. I said hi already. My name is Zion Rogers. I'm 17 years old. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a youth activist here in the city, and I was called upon by another community organizer activist. His name is Ajamu Butler. He is actually, I think he's actually a presenter, and he helped organize this summit, I believe so. But he called upon and he asked if I would be willing to participate and present a workshop for you all. And I know I attended the summit last year and I really loved it. Of course, we were in person, but in terms of the sense of change agency, I really wanted. I really thought this was something I wanted to be a part of the next year. So I immediately accepted the request. And so here I am today. Um, Presenting to you all the workshop. The title, The Rod Wave Effect, a culturally responsive examination of the sad aesthetic in youth culture. So we're going to go over, I know that's like a mouthful, but in terms of throughout the workshop, we're going to kind of unpack what that truly means and really like the origins of how I decided to come up with this idea and where this concept came from. So we're going to unpack all of that throughout this workshop. Um, I have some. Okay. So who am I? Um, I can start. I actually, so really the format, the way I wanted this workshop to flow was really like discussion based, conversational. Um, Considering there aren't many participants, Stephanie, do you think that we would have time for every participant to just say their name and where they're from?
Zion, Stephanie stepped away for just a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think we only have a few. Okay. I think we have time for it. So I can start. So I'm really just looking for name, where you're from, organization, and what comes to mind when you hear the title of my presentation. And everybody doesn't have to speak or share out. If you're not comfortable with that, you could put it in the chat. And I just kind of want to get a gauge of where everybody is from. And I'll be occasionally checking back in the chat box because I know I can't see you all right now. But yeah, I can start. My name is Zion Rogers. I've said that like 10 times. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Organization I'm from, I actually founded my own organization, and I am the lead organizer of it, the MKE Youth Power Alliance, and I am also a member of Urban Underground. They're actually here at the summit, so yeah. Um, and then what comes to mind when you hear the title of my presentation? I won't answer that one, but I can go back to the chat and just see where you all are at with that.
Yeah, I can get us going. I'm Tienzo Cargile Jr., born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm with the Milwaukee Health Department's Office of Violence Prevention. And when I saw the title, I was like, okay, it's not just me. Rod Wave is very sad. So the title, I was like, okay, somebody's gonna finally tell me why this man is so sad. So that's that's what jumped out at me. And it was you, so I was like, I got us for it.
Absolutely.
I
Okay.
can go next. So hi, I'm Andrea Turtenwald. I live in Milwaukee. I grew up in New Berlin outside of Milwaukee, but I've been living in Milwaukee for probably 10 years now. And I work for the Office of Children's Mental Health. So it's a statewide agency thinking about mental health in kids and young people. And I also just like to listen to hip hop. And so I think of Juice World, honestly. Like I know that may not fit this whole conversation, but like just hearing his music and then knowing what happened for him and his end, like I just, yeah, I want to explore music in the way that we talk about mental health and our emotions. So I'm really excited, and I'm excited that you're able to share that with us, Zion. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I can go next. I'm Morgan Warchek. I work for Community Action in Beloit, Wisconsin. So I coordinate an adult preparation program for teens. All in all, I'm a sexual health educator. And so I work with a lot of teens and I've seen this sad aesthetic. And I've always been curious on kind of where it's coming from. And I've heard it in a lot of music too. So as soon as I saw this, I was super, super interested in it. So excited to learn more. Thank you, Zion.
Thank you. Thank you. Um,
I can go next. Hello everyone. My name is Anjali, she, her, hers, from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm with Wiseman Gathering Place. What comes to mind when I hear the title? Yeah, like I said, a lot of my younger siblings listen to hip hop, Rod Wave as well. So I'm excited to see what this topic and everything has to go about. So.
okay. Anyone else?
I can go next. Sorry, I don't have I'm at work today joining us, so I don't have a camera, but my name is Galena. I work for Encourage, which is a domestic violence center in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I initially was signed up for a different presentation that was canceled. So when I looked through the list, yours is the one that caught my eye the quickest. I agree that I see kind of an overarching theme of like a sad aesthetic. So I'm really interested to see what we're going to learn about today.
Thank you. Absolutely. Anyone willing to go next? I lost you all again. I can't see you, but
I could go if no one else wants to go. So yeah, I'm Josh. I'm in Algoma, Wisconsin for the Violence Intervention Project. We do Kewaunee County I'm a victim advocate. And yeah, I definitely it was the idea of like the real sad boy hours, and then like, you know, when you talk about like songs like Marvin's Room and things like that just are supposed to like, you know, you're there to be sad type of thing. So it really got my attention. That's why I'm here.
thank you. Anyone else willing to share out? And if not, we can continue. Okay. Okay, we can continue. So I'm sorry, my apologies. I'm not really savvy with tech, Zoom specifically. Okay. Then, all right. So the rod wave effect. When you hear that, some of you, like when you all were presenting, I heard a lot of people kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of what it is. So in complex terms, the rod wave effect is, well, to start, I'm not sure if I know Rod Wave, he's a popular rapper, especially amongst my peers and my community. Rod Wave is a rapper who, Southern rapper, I believe, really young man, 20 years old, so around my age range, I'm 17. A lot of his music tends to focus on the trauma and pain that was inflicted upon him, like throughout his upbringing and just the social conditions that he was brought up amongst. So really his music is just about the struggle, and his sentiments, his story really seems to resonate with a lot of young people, a lot of my peers, including me. Like I love Rod Wave. So I wanted to use his name because his presence and what he's about is really like the overarching theme of this concept. So in complex terms, it's on the screen. The rod wave effect is an almost faddish disposition and movement amongst many Black and Brown youth who seem to gleefully embrace and dwell in feelings of sadness, despair, and dread. In this condition, affliction in youth is glorified, and depressed expressions and style of presentation are made popular in the thing to be. So, in simpler terms, the not to downplay the and not taking away the pain and trauma inflicted amongst young Black and brown young people, but sad has almost become something that we have worn proudly. Being sad, being traumatized, just the pain and despair that we felt, that has been something we've worn proudly. And media and music have definitely influenced that heavily. So we can move on to the next slide. So why is this important, you may ask? I know recently, the past 10, I would say this past decade, especially, the conversations about mental health within the Black community, that has really been a big conversation and discussion. And people have become increasingly more aware of how Black mental health has gone unaddressed. And we resort to suicide and things that just we resort to a lot of issues, and so we don't really have any outlets to vent and channel these negative feelings that we're experiencing. I have a few data points written down as well. As of 2018, suicide has become the leading cause of death in Black children aged 10 to 14, and the third leading cause of death in Black adolescents aged 15 to 19. Second point, Black people face increased rates of risk factors, including experiences of racism, higher rates of unemployment and financial, food security, disparities in other aspects of health, and limited access to care, all of which result in an increased burden of mental illness in Black communities. So once again, in simpler terms, what I'm getting from that and what I want you all to understand is that a lot of the systemic inequities and systemic oppression that are inflicted onto Black people can result in mental health issues and mental health problems that, like I mentioned previously, often go unaddressed and are not attended to at all. So, and I feel that is very problematic, and so it's one of the reasons why I felt this workshop was really necessary, especially for my peers and Black youth. I feel as if we're not heard. So we can move on to the next slide. History. And I can also, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna occasionally check back in the chat just to see any questions. And I didn't mention this earlier, but if you have any questions or you want me to slow down while I'm presenting, please, don't be afraid to unmute yourself and let me know and ask the questions, because I can't really see the chat, but I'll be checking back in occasionally. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute. So history, I have some history for you guys. So the reality of pain and suffering has been defined for many Black children. We see it almost every day. We sometimes struggle with really conceptualizing what's going on as Black youth, because once again, like those we don't really have as many access to those resources. So we see, in simpler terms, we see pain and suffering on a day-to-day basis. Now, this reality of Black pain and struggle, like I mentioned previously, has become an aesthetic, and we've worn those stripes proudly. And that dates all the way back to history, as presented in this historical image. So what we see here, I'm going to give you all 15 seconds to just look at what's presented in the image. And just try to notice all the details, and then I'm going to explain what's going on. Give me 10 more seconds. Okay, so this image was taken in 1964. I was about a few weeks ago, as I was kind of developing the concept of my workshop, I was paging through this book and I happened to stumble upon this image. I'm just like, wow. Um, it really struck me. Um, Black children. So the book actually gave context as to what was happening in the image. It was taken in 1964. Black children, their parents, in the background of the photo, their parents were in the grocery store and they were outside playing. And as you can see, they are pretending as if they are holding a lynch mob or a lynch rally, because you can see the little boy on the far right with the noose in his hand. So when in terms of sad aesthetic, I was just like, wow, this is really it. I mean, we're wearing our pain. Um, we're wearing it as if it's normal, and we've just normalized this dread, despair, and horror within the Black community. And although it is a reality for us, the way it is displayed makes it seem as if this reality is normal, as we can see here. And in present day, I mean, that has manifested in different ways through social media and videos. We see different photos, traumatizing images of Black pain and suffering, but it's been normalized as if it is the only way for Black people, and it is not. So I have another image presented. Well, I'll give you 10 seconds to take a look at this as well. So, I know more recently, we all know this past summer, I like to call it the summer of uprising. There has been there's been a one of the largest movements in history. It's been a global movement. We know the name Black Lives Matter. Um, and so this past summer, our reality has been displayed and defined for us as Black people. Um, we've seen it in media, different photos and images, and the Black Lives Matter movement definitely helped to shed light on and define our harsh reality of state violence, police violence, and systemic oppression, and Black white supremacy as a whole in its totality has just been defined as our reality. Now, what I wanted to make clear, um, there's a difference, I believe, in defining our reality and normalizing our reality. Um, Black Lives Matter movement definitely helped to define our reality, but media, different forms of media, however, definitely has had influence on normalizing this reality. Now, you might ask what normalizing this reality may look like. Um, I can provide specific examples, as I have presented on the screen, videos of Black state violence, Black killings, and I feel as if we've seen it, specifically the George Floyd video and numerous videos in the past, Laquan McDonald, Mike Brown, Philando Castile. Our pain and our suffering has been displayed as if Black death and the atrocity of white state violence, as if that was just normal and that's just something you should be seeing on a day-to-day basis. And I feel as if that was very problematic for them to display those things as if, oh, this is just a part of what Black people are. And although it helped to define the reality, it also problematically normalized it. And then I also have another example. Um, so CNN every year they do a 2020 recap, and they talk about things that happened throughout 2020. And on this year's recap, they labeled and deemed the Black Lives Matter movement as a cultural reset. Now, although it definitely did help shape the year, um, deeming labeling Black pain and Black horror and Black trauma as a cultural moment is indeed problematic because there are so many things that make up Black culture that they could have used if they wanted to really um, use us as a Black cultural moment, but they utilized our Black pain. So once again, they normalized and they made Black pain and Black death a part of our reality, our makeup, and that is problematic. So we can move on to the next slide. So I'm going to tie it back. Now I'm going to tie it back to music, the Rod Wave effect. So in the past slide, I mentioned that there is a clear, distinct difference between defining and normalizing reality. And just to give more context in what I mean in terms of music, because this is the Rod Wave effect workshop, subgenres of music and media throughout the past have defined reality. From gangster rap in the 90s, groups like NWA, bling bling rap in the early 2000s, and then more recently, trap music and drill music have definitely defined reality. But once again, I feel as if it's somewhat, in a way, normalized. Once again, not to say there's no beauty in culture, but just in terms of some of the way the music is displayed, it's almost as if this is normal. So we definitely have to find that fine line between defining and normalizing our reality. Now, before I move on, I just want to make sure there aren't any questions in the chat, just to make sure you all are following me.
Zion, this is Andrea. I guess I have a quick question if I could
Okay.
ask it. I get the normalizing reality. Can you say more about music defining reality? Does that just mean like it is capturing the current state of things? Or like, I guess I want a little more clarification on what the defining piece would look like, if that makes sense.
Okay, so the defining piece was specifically, and I'm gonna kind of get into that a little more. The defining.
Okay, then don't worry about, if you're gonna get into it later, don't worry about it.
Okay. Okay. So, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we've had different iterations of our reality being defined for us through gangster rap, bling bling rap, trap and drill music. So now we have this new kind of subgenre of music, pain. And I presented a quote. This is one of Rod Wave's quotes from his song, "Too much on my brain, man, that pain run deep." Um, and that's just kind of, if you didn't know who Rod Wave was, a lot of his music is centered around pain. And so that's really, that quote is really just the gist of what his music is about. So when we discuss our pain and struggles, and Andrea, just to answer your question, so discussing our pain and struggles would more so be defining reality as opposed to normalizing it. But then when we fail to talk about the origins of this pain or the potential to heal from it rather, that's when it kind of falls into the normalizing category and it becomes more of like a circular talk thing, not really recognizing how we can come out of it and how we can heal from it. Pain is real and much of our reality, but it is not normal. And we are not to blame for this because, as I mentioned in the previous slides, media has played a huge role and has had major influence in painting this picture for us. So, this is the Rod Wave workshop. So I'm gonna play a song for you all. If you all can't hear, please unmute and let me know. And just let me pause. And I want you all to kind of pay attention to the lyrics within, because in the next slide, we're gonna kind of talk through them. So can you all hear when I played it? Can you all hear?
Yes, we can hear it.
Yep.
So that was one of Rod Wave's thousands of songs. He has a lot of songs. So that's just like one example. Really, this song is really just an excerpt of all of the songs he has, of the kind of pain that I'm referring to when I say that has been normalized. And although it is real and much of our reality, it is not normal. So we can move on. So this part of the session, I wanted to circle back to you all and kind of discuss like what I covered, and just to get like a gauge, is just to see if what I'm saying is really resonating with you all and if you all understand it. And in this moment, I was hoping that we could do break groups. How many participants do we have? Let me see.
This is Steph, Zion. I can help you with that. We have 20 participants and four of us. We've got two interpreters and then you and myself. So 16 workshop registrants that are here today.
Zion, you're muted, just so you know.
Okay. I was hoping that maybe we could do like 4 groups of 4.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, where they can just discuss and maybe take about 5 minutes, and then we can come back and discuss what was covered.
Okay, sounds good. Let me try to get this going. And I'll be putting the ASL interpreters in one of the breakout spaces. So if you want to directly message me, if you would like to be in the same space as the interpreters, feel free to let me know via chat. Um, so 4 breakout rooms. All right, let's see here. All right. All right, folks, you should be able to get to your interpreters. I'm sorry, to your breakout spaces. And if you're wanting to be with the interpreters, just let me know. Okay, it looks like everybody is in their room, Zion, except of course for you and I. Okay. And I'm just while we're waiting, Zion, I don't know if you want to jump in the rooms with them or not. You can actually, as a host, you should be able to like go in and pop in and out of the rooms if you want to do that, or we could just wait and wait for them to come back.
Okay. Um, for some reason, like my screen is black. I can't really see anything when I click on the. Is there a way I could leave and come back?
You said your screen is black?
Yeah, it's completely black. Like I can't even see like any of the grids, like with any participants.
Oh. Well, that's because all the participants are in the rooms.
Yeah, that, and then I know I can't see you either.
Strange. Well, you got in here successfully. What I found out, Zion, is that the bit.ly link to this workshop was actually broken. So a bunch of people that registered to be here ended up not being here. So I had to email all the registrants to try to get them the correct information. So let me just make sure that if you leave, you're able to come back.
Okay.
And that you have the correct link here. So let me know if you can see this in the chat. I'm going to send it directly to you, Zion.
Okay.
And then if you want to just note that link or copy and paste that link somewhere on your end so that when you leave, you can come back.
Okay.
And yeah, that should be fine. I can see your screen right now, Zion.
You can? Okay.
Yep.
I don't know what's wrong.
Hello, folks. Welcome the 2 folks that just got here. I know there were some troubles with the bit.ly link being broken. Apologies for that inconvenience. We are recording this workshop, so it'll also be available. But the folks that just joined us, just giving you a heads up that the participants in today's workshops are currently in breakout spaces, reflecting on some of the information that Zion just shared. Do you all have questions or anything about joining today or?
There it is.
Awesome, thank you. Velvet and the other person that's signed in as Zoom user, if you'd like to jump in the chat, I can rename yourself to have it reflect who you are if you'd like. And if y'all want to just hang tight until the participants come back from their breakout spaces, and then we will continue. I just renamed you Ariana on the participant list. Thank you.
Stephanie,
Yep,
are they allowed to return now?
yep, I can have them return. All right, so let me go ahead and, all right, the breakouts will close in 1 minute. and then they'll all be back.
Cool.
"15 seconds and everybody will be back." All right, everyone is back with you, Zion. Oh, and I can see your screen, Zion. Yep. It's like your email looks like mine.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to the slide. So, how are the breakout groups? If you all are comfortable, I would really love if you all could just share out what was discussed. Or if you're not comfortable like talking and unmuting, you can just put in the chat and we can see like where everybody is and if everything is making sense so far.
And Zion, sorry, this is Steph. I wanted to let you know your video is off, so we can see the interpreter, but we can't see you in case you wanted to put your video back on.
Okay.
And again, folks, you can click the gallery option in the upper right-hand part of your screen so you can still see everyone.
Let me check the chat. Okay.
All right, I can see you now, Zion.
And if not, we can move on.
I can speak a little bit for our group.
Cool.
So I had Marissa and Mylea in my group. We had a really good conversation about current artists. And we also, we got your question towards the end. And we talked a little bit about how the media normalized drug use. And then we referenced like K2.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you. I definitely can resonate with that, especially since we're talking about music. There's been like another subgenre of music I like to call, I think it's called emo rap, and artists like Juice WRLD, XXX Tentacion, Lil Peep, like a lot of that, the drug use has been normalized. So that is definitely valid. So thank you.
This is Andrea. I would jump in too because we actually talked about a couple of things you just said, Zion. For one, we talked about again Juice WRLD and XXXTentacion, or however you say their name. And I had brought up too, just like when I was growing up, I listened to a lot of emo music that was like alternative rock. And so in one way, it's kind of cool that there's another outlet for folks who want to like have those feelings and feel those feelings, like a different genre that they can grab onto here. But yeah, again, we just kind of talked about the fact that sometimes you're listening to music because you just like the sound of it and you're not really thinking about the words. And sometimes you're listening to the word and like the words are really what's important to you about that song. And so just kind of, yeah, thinking about that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. In terms of music, we subconsciously don't even realize sometimes what we're feeding ourselves and what we're internalizing. So thank you. Um, and any more? We have probably have time for one more. And if not, we can move on. Chat. Okay, we can move on. So, just to wrap up what we talked about, and just to kind of conceptualize it a little bit, and bring it back home, is being sad the new aesthetic? Um, and honestly, I can definitely say that it is. What I have presented on the screen, because Black youth have been traumatized both overt and covertly, it is common for us to lose our sense of identity and who we are, considering that in terms of our communities, there's a lack of resources and exposure to different things that can keep us sustained and grounded. So we tend to lose our identity. And so when hearing and seeing media enforce notions of pain and trauma and suffering, it is only natural for us to latch on to this narrative and live vicariously through them. So hence the reason why a lot of rappers and artists, like a lot of their music and a lot of their art can tend to be wrapped around their feelings, their negative, their feelings of despair and pain. And not to say that those feelings aren't valid and that those feelings aren't our reality, but well, we're gonna get into it. I was gonna one second. So I know we talked about music, but how can the aesthetic kind of play out in our everyday lives? How can the sad aesthetic play out in our everyday lives? So on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, I know amongst my peers, I see a lot of them venting on their social medias, and it's almost, I see, and one thing I do see, and this is another conversation amongst the Black community, that when they do bring up their pain, that they're laughed at, or oh, he's just fishing for attention, um not really realizing that what they're saying probably is valid, but they just don't have any other outlet to express that. And that can take the form, I know they're called NBA YoungBoy quotes, but I know I see other rappers on them sometimes. And these aren't even necessarily quotes by these rappers, they're just generalized pain sentiments. The first one, I'm losing myself, I can feel it. Well, I'll let you all read them and I continue. I tend to see a lot of these tweets and these quotes, and I feel as if we've just been made to feel invisible and that we're not really seen. So we attach our trauma to another being. Hence the reason why we see YoungBoy and other rappers, like we utilize these tweets and these quotes. So that makes sense. Just any feedback before I continue? Check the chat. I can't really hear you. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? Before I continue, because I want
Nope, I can hear you well.
Okay. All right, I can continue. So the bottom line is, so just to put everything we discussed in this into like a nutshell, when pain is discussed, specifically within the Black community, healthy conversations are not being had around it. Conversations become circular, and when I say circular, they mean we just talk about the pain and we talk about the trauma, which is all necessary, don't get me wrong, but no real healing and solution comes from it. So really just we can continue to shed light on our truth while finding ways to reshape our truth. That's really the ultimate solution, I feel, to kind of come up out of this pain, and really just finding a positive, healthy way to really just a positive, healthy outlet to express this pain and heal from it. So now how can we come out of this pain? Um, I'm not an expert in mental health and I will not pretend as if I am, but I know in a broader sense, when thinking of Black people, when thinking of those of African descent, I feel as if with any of the issues that we faced, that we're facing now, that we faced throughout history, I feel as if in terms of finding real solutions for them, we must begin to think bigger. We must begin to think of our potential, and we must remember and recognize that from which we come, that we are destined to return. It's um Sankofa bird in African mythology. That's really the saying, the phrase, what that from which we come, we are destined to return. And I always remember that when I'm thinking of healing and radical possibility. So in other words, when we are identifying the issue, we must never forget to always offer a solution. Um, so really, we can make clear examinations of the current conditions that we live amongst, but then when we examine it, we must then provide a revolutionary, futuristic perspective on what comes next and how we can come up out of it. So, are you all following me? Let me check the chat. Oh, my apologies. Okay, cool. And please do not be afraid to chime in and slow me down. Ask any questions. So, I don't think we have time for another breakout group, but I wanted to play
Hey
this song.
Zion. Hey
Yes.
Zion, sorry, this is Steph.
Mhm.
Because there were a lot of hiccups with the connection details for the workshops today, we have canceled the closing for day 2.
Oh, okay.
So feel free to take as much time as you need. We have time all the way till 4 if you need it, and participants are willing to stay with you all. So
Okay.
I don't know if participants in the chat want to jump in and let Zion know if you're also able to stay until about 3:45 or even 4 o'clock. But we have canceled the day 2 closing to allow for some additional made up time. Um, uh, um, to be of support. Jasmine, in the chat, you said, do we go back to the big group? No, we will not be having a large closing session for day 2. We're just going to be completing the workshops and reconvening tomorrow. So if folks want to stay, and Zion, if you want to use some more time, we want to try to be flexible with that, given so many challenges came up with folks being able to access this workshop space.
Yay. Okay.
And it looks like, yeah, folks in the chat are saying, I'll stay, I'm loving this, let's get it, I can stay.
Yay.
So feel free, Zion.
Yay. Okay. That's great to hear that you all are enjoying it. I'm really enjoying being here considering that you all are engaged. Um, yeah, so we can really move on to, or unless you all had any questions, anybody want to chime in before I get started with the next breakout group? Nope. Okay. So, J. Cole. I love J. Cole. Um, in terms of pain rap, he definitely would not fall under that category. I love all types of rap, but J. Cole would definitely have to be one of my favorites. He's known for making music that is reflective of himself as well as the collective conditions and current state of Black people, and just really the world around us. And so I really feel like artists like him are valuable to the movement, to social change movements, because they make art that is reflective, and that is really necessary for any liberatory revolutionary movement. So I really love J. Cole. um, and I wanted to present this song to you all because I feel like in terms of healing and the solutions that there are certain pieces in here that I wanted you all to identify and share out where he talks about the current reality of our pain and where he offers a radical perspective on how to transition out of it. So I'm really hoping that we can do a breakout group. You know, we have time for it. And I can play the song for you all. And I can also drop the link when you all go to your breakout groups. So let me know if you can hear.
This is called being high as shit.
Yep, we can hear.
Okay.
For hours. That's the name of the song. We've been high as shit for hours. Here we go. Yeah. American hypocrisy, oh let me count the ways. They came here seeking freedom, then they end up owning slaves. Justify the use of Christianity, which says religion don't mean shit, it's too much ego in the way. That's why ISIS is the crisis. But in reality, this country do the same shit. Take a life and call it righteous. Remember when Bin Laden got killed, supposedly, in a hotel lobby after a show. Was noticing these white ladies watching CNN covering the action. They read the headline and then they all started clapping. As if LeBron had just scored a basket at the buzzer. I stood there for a second, watched them high-five each other. For real? I thought this was thou shalt not kill, but police still letting off on niggas in the bill, claiming that he reached for a gun. They really think we dumb and got a death wish. Now somebody's son is laying breathless. When I was a little boy, my father lived in Texas. Pulled up in Toyota, drove that bitch like it was Lexus. Put my bag in his trunk and headed off for Dallas. Out there for the summer, feeling just like I was Alice. Lost in the wonderland when niggas still suffering, just like they was back home, and that's wrong. So now fuck the government, they see my niggas struggling and they don't give a fuck at all, and that's wrong. Yeah. Type of shit to make you wanna. Type of shit to make you wanna let go. Type of shit to make you wanna. Type of shit to make you. I had a convo with the president. I paid to go and see him. Think about the things I said I'd say when I would see him. Feeling nervous sitting in a room full of white folks. Thinking about the black man plight. Think I might choke. Nope. Raise my hand to ask the man a question. Does he see the struggle of his brothers in oppression? And if so, if you got all the power and the clout as the president, what's keeping you from helping niggas out? Well, I didn't say nigga, but you catch my drift. He looked me in my eyes and spoke, and he was rather swift. He broke the issues down and showed me he was well aware. I got the vibe he was sincere and that the brother cared. But dog, you in the chair, what's the hold up? He said it's things that I want to fix, but you know this shit, nigga, politics. Don't stop fighting and don't stop believing. You can make the world better for your kids before you leave it. Change is slow, always has been, always will be. But fuck that, I'ma bust back till they kill me. Change is slow, always has been, always will be. But fuck that, I'ma bust back till they kill me. Feel me? Type of shit to make you third verse. Type of shit to make you wanna let go. Type of shit to make you wanna, yeah. Type of shit to make you wanna. Here's a thought for my revolutionary heart. Take a deeper look at history. It's there to pick apart. See the people at the top, they get to do just what they want. Till after a while, the people at the bottom finally get smart. Then they start to holler revolution. Tired of living here in destitution. Fuck that looting. Can you tell me what's the best solution? I used to think it was to overthrow oppressors. See, if we destroy the system, that means we'll have less of greed. See, it's not that simple. I got to thinking about the history of human nature while this instrumental played. Then I realized something that made me wonder if revolution was really ever the way. Before you trip and throw a fit over these words I say, think about this shit for a second. You heard the way the children in abusive households grow up knocking girlfriends out cold. That's called a cycle. Abuse becomes the abuser, and that's just how life goes. So understand, you get the power, but you know what power does to man. Corruption always leads us to the same shit again. So when you talk about revolution, dog, I hear just what you're saying. What good is taking over when we know what you're gonna do? The only real revolution happens right inside of you. I said, what good is taking over when we know what you're gonna do? The only real revolution happens right inside of you. Nigga. Type of shit to make you wanna high for hours. Type of shit to make you wanna let go. Type of shit to make you wanna. Type of shit to make you wanna let go.
Hey Zion, this is Steph. I'm wondering if you and the folks present would be open to just staying in the same place or same space to debrief or reflect on that video.
Yeah.
Okay, got a couple thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So let me go back to the slide. So I know he said a lot. Let me represent. So I really just would really be open and really want to hear you all's thoughts on the song, and also identifying and sharing out where he talks about the current reality and pain, and where he offers a radical perspective on how to transition out of it. Um, Rap is always fast, so I know like you kind of get like scrambled like in terms of like what they're saying, because it is really quick. So if you're not, if you aren't really able to identify and share that piece out, you, an alternative to that could be you could provide an example of an instance or an example in media where reality has been defined for us in a healthy way, whether that be through art, music, film, just anything. I just kind of want to hear um, what you all are thinking.
I guess just to get the ball rolling. I know for me, I've heard that song at least 10 times, and I feel like every time I hear it, I hear something new. Um, and I guess this time what caught me was his conversation with Barack, and this idea that, oh, you're in the highest position that your normal citizen can get to. Um, and he asked him, well, we all want to ask Barack, why you ain't gonna do more for black people? Why didn't you do more for black people, so to speak? And so that question and Obama's response is, in essence, very true. Um, the federal government can only do so much. We have more power on a local level every time. We always have more power on a local level. But a lot of us are stuck on this idea that the larger government is supposed to save us. Um, so, in essence, Barack was basically telling him, get as radical as you're comfortable with and start to fight for that change at home.
Absolutely. You know, that piece is very valuable considering what you, so thank you. Um yeah, what you just said is like really like valuable, because in terms of what I believe in and my ideologies, I do believe that, like you said, change and revolution has to start community based at a grassroots level. Like um federal, in terms of hierarchy, federal and any national entity, they cannot save us in terms of how systems are organized and how they're set up. And so like you said, any radical change that is going to occur has to start with the people. So thank you. um Anyone else, anything you heard from that, or anything you'd like to share, any art, media that you really feel offers a radical perspective in a healthy way? I really love to hear.
I guess two things I want to say. This is Andrea again. For one, I had the same kind of takeaway like at the very end when he's like, it's up to you. Like the revolution starts with you. Like I thought that was really powerful. And it reminded me of what Samantha, our keynote today, was talking about too. Like it's about our personal experience and what we do. So I thought that was a cool way to like show again, to your point, like there is a way through the pain, or there is a way to resolve, and that's the way through it. So you don't just listen to the song and feel sad the whole time. Like he kind of leaves you with like a here's what you can do. And the other song that's coming up for me is How Many More Times, which of course now I'm totally blanking on who the artist is of that song too. But I think that song has been really powerful, and like speaking to, again, like the uprisings that we've seen this year and just, or in 2020, and like providing a different way through that pain instead of just sitting in the pain. So that's just another one that came to mind.
Thank you. I believe I was about to look up How Many More Times, but I believe that song is by Trey Songs. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yep. So that's definitely another example of media and art, how that's had an influence on and just really shared a radical perspective for the collective. So really valuable. So thank you, Andrea. Anybody else willing to share? And if not, we can move on.
I feel like this song definitely, like both of you said, it's kind of like the change has to start within yourself. And I
Mhm.
think that with the like all the protests this summer, a lot of people woke up, especially a lot of white people woke up to what's been happening all these years. And another song that comes to mind is This Is America by Donald Glover. Like that also helped people like wake up, I think. But I like how this song actually kind of had like almost a call to action. Like, yes, all this is happening, but what can you do? It's kind of like
Mhm.
start with yourself, do what you can do in your own life and in your own communities.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, both great songs. So thank you. Anyone else willing to share out?
Yeah, this is Steph Zion. Trying not to take up too much space, but yeah, I think it's always interesting how like J. Cole and Glover and other rappers or hip hop artists, singer songwriters are able to communicate a message in a different way so that folks can hear it.
Mhm.
And folks are able to internalize it in a different way as well, right? And so like it's always interesting to me, like when I'm working with young people, music and art in that form is always a way I try to connect with them, because you'll be surprised how quickly they can like memorize a song and remember the lyrics and internalize the concepts better than me speaking from a PowerPoint or a presentation or like anything, right? So I really appreciate the workshop today because it really resonates in the way that I try to use music and art in that form, to have young people particularly internalize a message in a way in which I, as someone who is not a singer songwriter and I like to think that I can rap sometimes. I write a flow here and there, maybe do a little poetry from time to time, but for the most part that is certainly not my talent area. But I always try to bring in music and lyrics to help with that, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Um, yeah, and just to expand on what you just said, hip hop, like you said, really resonates with young people. Like I've been reading, I can't remember what specific book it was, but it said that like hip hop is almost in the genetic makeup of youth, black youth and black and brown youth, like just rhythmic beats. And so in terms of like education and teaching, a lot of people have been looking to implement hip hop into their curriculums because it is really valuable. It resonates with a lot of young people. So thank you. Um and then if you're not willing to share out, if you all want to drop something in the chat or we can move on. I just want to see what you guys are thinking and feeling. I'll even have you instead of doing. Absolutely. Yes. Hip hop is hopefully in the future will take over education. Okay.
I'm sorry, real quick. So I brought up with our group that we had earlier, because I guess I didn't remember what the question was, so I went on a different tangent. But it was talking more about like, so like, how we now have this like sad aesthetic and things like that. I brought up the idea of coming from that, like, growing up in the inner city and things like that, of being like, of like poor status and things like that, and how people used to compare or like want to be the poorest in that situation because it means you've dealt with a lot worse. And I think that's what we're dealing with now, is like coming out of this music and out of these ideas is like, I had it a lot worse than everyone else.
Mhm.
And then some people who didn't experience that same thing, I think, listen to this music as well to try and experience that same, like, maybe I was a middle class citizen and was like, well, like, I don't know that lifestyle, but like, I want to feel just as sad as someone who maybe, didn't have everything that someone else did. So yeah, I think it's that idea as well, going into why we have this sad aesthetic coming in.
Absolutely. And that is like definitely, you hit the nail on the head. Um, I know in the like one of the earlier slides, I mentioned that when we have trouble like conceptualizing like our own pain and struggle and really understanding it, we tend to latch on to other narratives that may not technically and definitely like define what we're going through, but we tend to latch on to things that aren't our struggle per se. And so what you just said is like really important, especially about those that come from a higher socioeconomic background, like the middle class children. When and I tend to see that a lot amongst my peers, when they can't really conceptualize and understand what they're going through and the pain they're struggling with, they tend to latch on to the pain and struggle that's presented in the music, the hood struggle, when it's really not their struggle. So thank you for that. And I think with that, is there anything else in the chat? I was gonna say we can move on. Okay. And then Stephanie dropped the link for the day 2 workshop evaluation and the raffle. So please click on that link and fill that out.
Yeah.
And so with that,
Thank you, Zion. And apologies, team. The workshop includes really just evaluating the day 2 workshop and the day 2 keynote. So it really should say day 2 keynote and workshop evaluation. But we'll love feedback. I know, apologies on the connection details. This was one of the workshops that was filled at registration, but the bit.ly link was broken. So a lot of folks had trouble getting here. And, it's the nature of trying to convert links to bit.ly and make things simpler. Sometimes challenges come with that. So thank you for making sure you got here. And we also are recording, so we'll be able to post this workshop post-event as well.
no problem. Thank you. And I know it's a bummer that they couldn't really get into the workshop, but like I really enjoyed myself. Y'all are awesome, amazing. It went well. I what I said kind of resonated with you all, and I'm really appreciative of about the level of engagement. So thank y'all. And yeah, with that, we can move on to the second to last slide. Uh-oh. No. Okay. So, how can we make radical perspective work within the sad aesthetic framework? To start, we can continue to support the artists, the Rod Waves, the NBA Young Boys, the Youngin Aces, Quando Rondo, all of those artists that perpetuate the sad aesthetic, the Juice WRLDs, the emo rappers, because ultimately Black art is valid and is always appreciated. We are the blueprint. And so definitely never to knock their art and what they're producing. But we have to hold them accountable because they have such a heavy influence over young people, my peers, and so they must be held accountable, encouraged to give young people something more, solutions to their problems through their art. So yeah, and then with that, I wanted to, because really the gist of my workshop was how we can help in a healthy way process collective trauma, collective pain, and grief. I wanted to leave you all with this video. We can.
You don't have to know somebody to grieve them. You don't have to have any relationship with them to grieve them. when we talk of vicarious traumatization, usually it's within mental health professionals, how they experience trauma secondhand by listening to their client talk about their trauma and the things that they've been through.
Out of this mess. That's right. That's what it is.
You don't have to watch the video, but when you hear about it, that, oh, this Black man was jogging and this happened to them, you could feel that helplessness, the fear, the anger, like all those trauma responses that the person may have had when they experienced the trauma. Hearing about it secondhand and not being there presently, you could still have those sensations. And for Black people in America, this is always the thing, that this could have been somebody that I know, because most of the time when this happens, it's people who look like us, people who we are friends with, people who we are in community with, so it hits home. So for me, I think it's not vicarious trauma. It's not only within the mental health profession, but it's also like the average person could also experience it.
And so with that, I just wanted to leave you all with that piece before we close out. She made some really important points. You don't have to know someone to really live through their pain. Like it's really just a collective trauma and grief that Black people experience as a whole. The Ahmaud Arbery's, the George Floyd's, Breonna Taylor's, and even the names that have gone left in the shadows, the names that the lives that are lost every day within Black communities, that names don't go national and don't get national attention. So when we think about those deaths and those instances, we can also process and experience that collective trauma, but in a healthy way. So it's normal and it's natural, but we just have to find healthy ways to do it.